Oh, it's dark out there.
Yeah, no, it's quite the audience.
Yeah. So let's check the audience. Because we don't want to make assumptions. Who knows what Wayland is around here? Hands up.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Well, I saw some people waving their hands a little bit like that, so maybe some people are unsure.
Yeah, well, should I explain it?
Let's go. Or not. Wow, the computer finally does actually go to sleep. Today we learned.
Yes. So, worlds of Wayland. So, well, let's start with who Neal is.
Yeah, sure. So I am a person who, I like to call myself a professional technologist and open source advocate. I do a bunch of stuff in lots of open source communities. A lot of people know me from the Fedora space, but I'm also involved in OpenSUSE, and I've done a little bit here and there in the Ubuntu space. I'm in CentOS, a bunch of other venues. And as part of the work I do in desktop Linux stuff, I am involved in KDE. I'm a member of KDEV. I also am part of the Xorg board of directors as a member. And I also have a podcast where I talk about open source, enterprise, desktop Linux, the whole works. And for my day job, quote unquote, I am a consultant with my company, Velocity Limitless, where I do open source engineering, consulting, architecture work, and that sort of thing for people out there across wanting to do fancy things with Linux.
Okay, I'm Alan Griffiths. My day job is team lead on the Mir team. The Mir team is many things to do with the management of Windows on various devices, from embedded devices to desktop computers to whatever the future brings. And I'm also a hobbyist software developer. And one day, a couple of years ago, I was thinking, well, why don't we have Mir on the desktop? So I sat down and did a little bit of hacking. This was in the Peak District in England. It was a nice sunny day, and my wife said it was far too warm to go walking. She was right, of course, but the result was Miriway. We get into Miriway, but with the teaser before, we took, say, Wayland. Wayland is a protocol. It's a way for applications and a compositor to discuss what ends up on the screen. Because it's a protocol, it's just like any language. You can have lots of people speaking their version. Neal speaks American English. I speak British English.
My English is better.
Well, but we can work together. So there's multiple server implementations of Wayland, Western, Mutter, Kwin, WL Root, Smithy, Mir. There's a whole string of those. And on the client side, they're typically part of toolkits such as GTK, Qt, SDL, Electron, Flutter. But the point is that Wayland is replacing the language that was used before. It's replacing X, because the people maintaining X got fed up with it and decided to go away and do something different. And it's here. It's coming, and it affects things. In particular, it affects desktop environments. The desktop environments such as GNOME and KDE have done a lot of work in getting Wayland to work for them, for their compositors, for all the elements of their desktop. And they have switched, largely. But not every desktop has the resources to do that work. They've already got their regular maintenance and feature development. They don't necessarily want to develop their own Wayland compositor. And in any case, they're going to have to migrate their docks, bars, launchers, and so forth to Wayland. Miriway is intended to help a bit with that process because it's just an off-the-shelf Wayland compositor. It does traditional floating window management. It's configurable, so you can add your own collection of docks, launchers, and so forth. You can configure what the key bindings do. It's got support, because of Mir, for on-screen keyboards, remote desktops, hybrid graphics, all the things you'd want to run a desktop. It's based on Mir. There are other desktop environments or compositors based on Mir. Ubuntu Frame is Canonical's product based on it. Miracle WM has... Is Matt over there?
He was over
He was over there. He must have moved.
Oh, he's over there in the other corner.
He's on that corner now, right.
Yeah,
There's
so
Lemiri, which also has a representative or two sneaking into the room. Yep, over there. All based on Mir. So it's not just me that's using it. Miriway itself is only 1,300 lines of code. It's straightforward GPL3. It's not the canonical CLA because it's my side project. And it's got configuration options for all the stuff we talked about. It's available off the shelf, has a snap. It's available from source code. It's used, because I've been using it for most of the last couple of years as my daily driver desktop. The Mir team use it to demonstrate features of Mir. It gets a few drive-by contributions for things that upset people. And Neal will tell you, it's coming soon on Fedora.
right, so I brought it into Fedora Linux. It's in Rawhide now to be aiming for Fedora 42. So let's talk about practically using Miriway. So demonstration slide, right? Well, you know, what if it was here the whole time?
That's it, live demos.
Yeah, that's the live demo part. But we already figured that part out. And that is, if I replug and unplug, you can see that we have a LXQt desktop environment with all the things. I can go ahead and pop up WayCheck. If you've heard of this, WayCheck is a little graphical application. If you've heard of, there might be a little tool called Wayland Info or all these other things. There's command line tools to be able to see how your compositor works. This is a fancy graphical way that lets you see it more visually and in a much more interesting way. So you can see we have all these fun Wayland protocols implemented from upstream, from the standard Wayland protocols, WL routes, and some of the, on the unknown category, you can see some of the ones that are special that no one knows about, including, well, that curious Mir shell thing. I don't know anything about that. We'll find out someday what that means. But hey, there you go. You see XGG cell, Vir portal, fractional scaling. You got all the good stuff here. And, you know, there's the windows floating around, doing the stuff. And yeah, this is running on here, LXQt 2.0. Running on there, and let's pop up a little terminal so that I can show that this is Fedora Linux 42 running LXQt 2.0 on a Wayland environment. And, you know, it just works. There's nothing really particularly special about it. You can see the panel down at the bottom. It's got the nice little Fedora logo. Some things don't work because this is actually an in-progress port by the LXQt project upstream to actually adapt their panel to Wayland. As Alan mentioned, right, the desktops have to port the components of their environment to run on these Wayland protocols to speak the correct language. And this is essentially in a preview state in the upstream, but I was able to put it together with Alan's help to make it a functioning, working environment that is actually running on this laptop with multi-display and apparently working power management to our nice surprise and things like that. So we'll just go back to, oh, I should just probably close these windows, yes, and go back to this, and Control-Shift-P. Oh, that is definitely not the button I wanted to press. Now you know that I don't actually know how my web browser works. Control-Alt-P. There we go. So how this early experiment that you can see here is actually essentially made up of 3 files. I set up the login manager to use Miriway. I set up the shell configuration. So it's just a simple INI style-ish file that declares what it terms shell components, like the panel, the background, and things like that. These are what, in the Wayland terms, if you've ever heard the word privileged client, that's what Mir calls shell components, and that that we define these applications to run that way. And we have some key bindings to be able to do the basic stuff and things like that. You could tell I didn't memorize any of these key bindings because I hit the wrong ones, but that's okay, it's fine. And then you have the Miriway session, which was setting all these variables, because it turns out the LXQt panel and the LXQt session stuff, shall we say, is not quite adapted to run on Wayland fully just yet, so it needed a little bit of help. And so we did that, and then at the end you see it launches Miriway with all the Wayland extensions turned on. Wayland extensions being all the extra Wayland protocols that Mir has not yet fully turned on by default, since we're using some tech preview stuff and whatever. So the end result, as you saw earlier, because we were doing this the whole time, is this. We have an LXQt desktop running on Fedora with Miriway, and this is all packaged and available in Rawhide, and it will come soon in the near future that you too can play with this. Or maybe you could also do it right now, because I made a preview demo ISO available. You can scan this QR code and download it at your leisure. And it is, as I said earlier, built on LXQt 2.0 with Miriway 2409. It's ported to most of the stack. And LXQt is unusual among desktops in which they have decided that they don't want to have an opinion about a compositor, and they want you to choose your own adventure on how to set up your Wayland environment. So we chose the adventure of Miriway, and it works out surprisingly well, as you can see, aside from me not knowing my own shortcuts. So the demo ISO is available eventually, like when Fedora 42 rolls around, or maybe I'll backport it to 41, who knows. You can just get it set up yourself and kind of hit the ground running on this. So, Alan, do you want to talk more about what Miriway is actually capable of doing?
So, I spoke a little bit about Miriway last year, and things have changed in the meantime. One of the big changes is that Mir has moved from version 2.14 to 2.18, and that's meant things like hybrid graphics being enabled, integration with login-D, notifying the shell built on top of Mir about screen dimming and off. There's a bunch of Wayland extensions that are useful on the desktop being added. Input method v1 is a bit strange because we already had v2 and v3 implemented, and then we came across some applications.
I don't want to talk about the input stuff.
You don't want to? OK, I won't talk about that. It's gained configuration options for input, and there's been quite a few fixes to the desktop experience. On the Miriway side, it's improved its handling of child processes so that shell components that fail can restart. That's something Matt did over there, because he had shell components that were crashing. I've added an option to specify a lock screen app so that, well, usually I just use Swaylock, and that will lock things when the login-D integration kicks off. There's support for docking and maximizing through dragging windows. That was something for Savick up there. And there's more coming.
Always more coming.
There's always more coming. Mir 2.19 is going to add to the locking options to detect when it's idle so that I can lock the screen when the thing powers down. And then Neal would have had to type his password in as well.
Yeah, that's what I kind of expected to have happen. But, you know, it was a nice surprise to see the locking actually work without me knowing it. So, hey, you guys did a good job.
We've also got Mir driving Atomic KMS, which is a bit more modern graphics stack. And there's some bug fixes. There's always bug fixes. Miriway, stuff that's in the works now, is some reworking of some example configs, because I've now learned a bit more about how to set up things like LXQt. There's better systemd integration, again, courtesy of Neal. And some support for side-by-side desktop configurations, so it's easy to install LXDE and something else, maybe Cosmic components.
Yeah. Like, I expect to see that, you know, multiple desktops might wind up sharing the same Miriway binary, but we obviously want the configs to actually match the correct desktops. And that's sort of the point of this. Like you saw with the demo and the fact that this presentation's working, we're doing this with LXQt, but we know that people install more than one desktop environment on a single system. Victoria yesterday in her talk, she did that with showing off, Cosmic on 4 different compositors. And so like we want to make sure that the inverse is true. You're using one compositor for 4 separate desktops. That should all work correctly.
So, any questions?
Neal, so what's the next desktop you're going to package for Fedora that's based on Mir?
Oh, wow. All right. Hard hitter right there. Well, I mean, I could just do weird things with Cosmic. That would be fun. But in all seriousness, right? Like, so LXQt was the one that I kind of started with because it was the furthest along on having its shell component stack ready to go for this. I'd actually like to poke at doing this with XFCE as well. There's actually a fair number of just random weird little desktops that exist in Fedora. I think like the last time I did a check, it's like 30 different desktop environments that are packaged in Fedora, and only about 6 of them have a Wayland strategy. And I've been going out to reach out to these communities and talk to them about like where are they, how do they feel about their Wayland strategy, and promoting Miriway as a way to do it. I've started talking to LXQt upstream as well as XFCE about it just last week.
I've got a little question coming from the Lumiri side of things. Assuming, because some of you may or may not remember Unity 8, the left-hand side launcher bar, the top notifications bar, whatever.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that. Pretty thing, right?
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Just a random thought to pop up. Assuming we put those things into privileged clients, would it still be possible to have like the launcher pull out of the left-hand side and still provide some blurring on top of whatever is on the rest of the desktop shell?
So right now, no, but yes, technically. The reason I say that is that there is a proposal by the KDE, one of the KDE members, to add a protocol specifically for handling these kinds of effects in such a way that it can be handled reliably, safely, expressively. You can look up the protocol on the Wayland Protocols project called XBlur, which is specifically what you're talking about. It's in the process of being slightly reworked. I can put you in touch with the person that's working on this protocol so we can make sure your part of this is kind of incorporated into this. But right now, I mean, if your shell components and if your shell component abuses layer shell the right way, you could technically do this. But the idea is to not do it that way and to do it in a way that's more declarative, for lack of a better phrasing.
Right, yeah. People who know me know that I like my blur, so
I mean, I like my blur too, so like I'm stoked about blur.
Yes, let's have a chat about blur later.
For sure.
Maybe just to quickly add on that, I don't know how many times Carl has bugged me about frosted glass effect and blurs on Cosmic, so we are also very much interested in XBlur, and this protocol will happen. All
right, so let's also talk, Victoria. All right. Any other questions from people? I know someone in here wants to ask about Wayland Miriway stuff. No? No one?
Oh.
Come on, we don't bite.
There's one question coming.
No, I got him. He did it. I knew it. It was coming.
It's not so much a question, but a belated observation. I've already been using Miriway to create some custom desktop shells. This presentation with LXQt has just made me realize I can bridge the gap for Wayland support in Ubuntu Mate and use Miriway as the compositor, unlike the current suggested upstream implementation, which is using Wayfire. So I can't believe I hadn't put those two things together in my mind after using
we could
Miriway
do that
for a while. So I think
that's what it's there for.
Yeah. And we could do that with Fedora Mate as well. Like, it would be great to collaborate on that front.
The only complication I see is you mentioned short shortcuts is having a bridge between like the session that handles the shortcuts from Mate Session Manager through to the compositor.
So this particular Miriway setup is kind of demonstrated as a fully isolated direct compositor with its own configuration running all the other components underneath it. But you could also flip it the other way around. You could take the code and then have it integrated and hook into, say, Mate Session, like Qt Session, whatever, and have it drive the configuration in runtime. I know this is something that I talked to Alan briefly about, as well as actually Matthew and with Miracle Window Manager, because the shell components we're using for Miracle have a similar philosophy of being able to drive the compositor's configuration in certain ways. And this is something that we are starting to think about how this would be done. And so if you have some ideas or feedback, it would be great to kind of sync up and make sure that we have a good plan for those things.
And a follow-on question is, on the roadmap, where does XGG Portal support, and particularly screen capture, screencasting, fit in?
Okay, so the XDG Portal support is something that the Mir team have on their roadmap. So we're expecting to have something in place over the next 6 months, at least a clear strategy of where we're going, if not a complete implementation of every portal everyone's heard of.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Observations?
Comments? Okay.
Okay then. So please try Miriway. It's available as a snap.
Yeah, and you can get it in Fedora as an RPM, or try my ISO from earlier.
Yeah.